Hello and welcome to the Good Taste channel. Once upon a time, there was this red-haired English girl called Elizabeth or Anne or something of that nature. She was the daughter of a bootmaker, yeah, who was very good at his job. They lived in the countryside. At the age of 15, the girl hooked up with a young jockey. Being a jockey back then was a prestigious profession. Jockeys were popular. Think Formula One drivers today. Together, they ran off to London, where she expected to become an actress, which was why she changed her name to Harriet Howard. In London, she met a wealthy aristocrat who was married. They had a child together, and then they broke up, and in order to avoid scandal, he set her up in this townhouse and gave her a great deal of money. Something like, I don't know, $20 million in today's money, give or take, and don't hold me to it. On the condition that she refrained from appearing in society ever again. Apparently, his wife didn't mind, so long as no one in their circle knew anything for sure. Oh, you know, keeping up appearances and all that. She was a good mother. She was a very good mother. But she was also restless. And so she dropped by a party at the house of Lady Blessington. Now, Lady Blessington was notorious for throwing parties, not just for folks of her own circle, but also for all kinds of questionable characters like writers, journalists, painters, and so forth. She had no problem inviting Harriet.
Sure, come tonight.
Now, at this party, Harriet met a man in his early 30s. He was French.
Bonjour.
What was he doing in London? Well, once upon a time, when Napoleon was still Emperor of France, his brother Louis Bonaparte and the brother's wife, Hortense de Beauharnais, had a child. Hortense, not Hortense, but Hortense. The boy was born in a Tuileries palace that was about as prestigious as you could get back then in France. It was a beautiful palace. Construction began in the 16th century and went on for about 100 years. It stood beside the Louvre. Kings lived in it, and Napoleon gave balls in there. In the year of our Lord 1873, the Paris Commune, a group of socialist revolutionaries, took power and held it for 2 months. They promised all sorts of good things like jobs, money for the poor, shorter work days, and so forth. What they actually managed to accomplish was knock over statues of Napoleon and some others and burn down the Tuileries Palace. Anyway, when Napoleon lost that battle of Waterloo and was exiled again, permanently this time, to St. Helena, the Bourbon dynasty assumed or resumed power. All folks loyal to Napoleon, including members of his family, naturally, were either killed, imprisoned, or exiled. Napoleon's nephews and their mother, Hortense, ran to Switzerland with a few stopovers, including Italy and England. Louis, when he grew up, he developed a taste for travel. He visited England, made friends there among prominent people. He also went to Brazil. He visited New York. Martin van Buren was president then. His birthday is December 5th. If you're struggling with debt, don't forget to raise a glass to his memory on that day.
It was under his administration the law was passed according to which creditors can squeeze the debtor dry, bleed him or her white, strip away all of his or her possessions, but the one thing they cannot do is put him or her in jail.
They used to be able to. Martin van Buren. Anyway, Louis Napoleon was going to explore all of the United States when he received news from Switzerland informing him that his mother was dying. His older brother had died of measles. So once again, Louis found himself in England. While there, he began to form a party. He was aware that technically, at least, he would be within his rights to claim his uncle's throne. I mean, the Bourbons, they were a mistake. Useless, blood-sucking usurpers. France was suffering under their rule. He had Bonaparte blood running through his veins. He would restore France to its former glory, so long as they made him emperor. His first attempt at a coup d'etat failed miserably, and he was arrested along with his co-conspirators. After a brief trial, he received a life sentence and was sent to prison in a place called spelled like ham. In fact, this was a chateau, still is a chateau, an old castle. It was no ordinary prison. Louis had 2 rooms for himself, a study and a bedroom. There was also a library. There was a garden. There was laundry service and decent food and even wine. Fine dining in prison, imagine that. He wore his own clothes. He wrote and received letters, and he studied a lot. He spent 6 years in that castle, during which he had a relationship with one of the laundresses who was married, but such things never bothered Louis. She had 2 sons with him. Her husband must have been too humble to object. I mean, Napoleon's nephew was Napoleon's nephew, a prominent figure. And her husband was, well, a nobody, supposedly. Just another loser from Now, fast forward 6 years, Napoleon, with some help from friends with whom he had exchanged letters, managed to escape. Dressed as a carpenter and carrying some planks, I don't know, the castle was being renovated at the taxpayers' expense, of course. He just walked out during the shift change. A carriage was already waiting for him. Upon returning to England and getting hold of his mother's inheritance, which was considerable, settling in and beginning to mingle in high society, he arranged for his 2 sons to join him. Their mother must have been devastated, but life in high society is far more pleasant than life among the, the working class. And this was an opportunity for her sons that she could not turn down. There must have been a governess and a cook and a housekeeper involved. I mean, Louis, who was now a London dandy, could not very well take care of 2 small children on his own. His lifestyle, compounded by his plans and ambitions, and the idea of changing diapers, those 2 were
Incompatible.
Anyway, one day he was invited to a party at Lady Blessington's house. And that's where he and Harriet Howard met. She fell in love. It may have been mutual. I think it was. They moved in together. Well, no. He moved in with her. She took in his 2 sons and began raising them along with her own son. She also financed his political projects. When his own funds were insufficient or had run dry, historians are vague on that point. As a matter of fact, they're vague on a lot of points. But that's a story for another day. And then the moment came. Another revolution broke out in France. The king and the royalists were shown the door. A new provisional government formed itself. A new constitution was written and rapidly ratified. By 1848, France was exhausted. Well, for one thing, there was the agricultural depression, Bad harvests led to soaring food prices, especially bread, hitting the poor and working classes the hardest, naturally. The industrial slump had ensued. Factories closed, resulting in mass unemployment. And then, of course, there was the financial crisis. Banks struggled, credit tightened. All this resulted in widespread poverty, hunger, and social unrest, particularly in urban areas. Citizen King Louis Philippe, who took power after the 1830 revolution, had initially been popular, but his regime grew increasingly stingy and was seen as serving only the interests of the wealthy bourgeoisie. And that always enrages folks. But the wealthy, they never learn, do they? They're people like everybody else. And like everybody else, they're prone to treading on the same rake again and again. Because it's gonna be okay this time. The new revolution overthrew Louis Philippe and established the so-called Second Republic. The subsequent June Days uprising in Paris saw radical socialist workers clash violently with the government, resulting in thousands of deaths. This brutal suppression sent shockwaves across France. Many conservative peasants, yeah, there were conservative peasants, bourgeois, and even some moderate workers. They all became terrified of further instability. They craved, well, the usual thing: strong leadership. Strong leadership and order above all else. Now, against this backdrop of economic crisis, political stagnation, social unrest, and fear, Louis Napoleon made his move. He ran for president. And I hasten to add, the Napoleonic legend must have been the most potent factor in his favor. Emperor Napoleon was remembered not for wars, but for bringing order, national glory, and efficient administration. His image evoked a strong, decisive leader who united France and made it respected internationally. Paradoxically, Napoleon I, the emperor, was also seen by many peasants, the largest segment of the population, as a man of the people who confirmed their land ownership and ended feudalism, in contrast to the Bourbons and the bourgeois monarchy. There was also some nostalgia. After decades of perceived weakness and actual internal division, the idea of a return to Napoleonic strength and unity was, well, deeply appealing to many people. Folks had little loyalty to the new republic. They feared urban radicalism, and that's why they were easily swayed by the simple, powerful, Bonapartist message. The name Napoleon was known across every village, representing strength and stability. On top of that, he presented himself as a candidate who was above party politics, someone who could unite all factions. Also, I would suspect his long imprisonment at gave him a certain mystique and made him seem like a victim of the previous regimes rather than part of the establishment. The other candidates were either too tied to the discredited July monarchy, or too conservative, or too radical for the majority of the electorate, and so they elected him. Louis Napoleon became the president of the Second Republic, which wasn't enough for him. 4 years? And then what? More elections? That's boring. So a year later, he staged a coup d'etat, which was successful this time, and made himself emperor. Louis Napoleon became Napoleon III. I have a video on that, by the way. Please find the link in the description. As emperor, he wanted an heir, a legitimate son, but one must avoid being laughed at. I mean, Harriet Howard, a failed actress, or that laundress from Are you kidding? An emperor's spouse must be of noble birth. As for Harriet, the loyal, loving, understanding Harriet, well, he couldn't very well parade her in front of the tout le monde. He couldn't because, how shall I put it? Let's see, yeah.
Because it doesn't behoove a man of good breeding to tangle with tatterdemalions.
How's that? So Harriet and the three boys moved first to an apartment on Rue de Cirque, and later, when Napoleon III had established himself, to the Beauregard Castle near Versailles. He paid for it himself, yes. He also paid her the money he owed for funding his political activities. It was a considerable sum. Well, in fact, it was a fortune, and the palace was a beauty. His agents searched for a suitable bride all over Europe. Ideally, she had to be a princess, and a good-looking one, too. I mean, the emperor couldn't very well marry an ugly hag, but pretty princesses seemed to have been in short supply at that moment, so eventually he had to marry a Spanish noblewoman. Her name was Eugénie. She was in fact beautiful, not particularly bright. Her new social status, her newly acquired influence, her position in society as Empress, I'm not quite certain, but one would suspect she took it all for granted. You know, the way an entitled teenage girl with like 5-inch fingernails and makeup an inch thick on her face takes the brand new car daddy just bought for her for granted because she, deserves it, while being completely oblivious to the mechanics and the effort behind it. It's like entitlement is reinforced by enablement. But I digress. Historians tell us that Empress Eugénie found the idea of physical intimacy distasteful, not with the emperor per se, but in general. She said it was disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I wasn't there, but that's what historians claim. And so the newly married emperor visited the Beauregard Palace every chance he got and found solace in the arms of the loyal, faithful, perspicacious, and loving Harriet, who was raising his two sons as her own. I beg your pardon. How did she take it? With a grain of salt, I suppose. Harriet Howard was an intelligent, ambitious, and worldly woman. She was deeply invested in her lover's success, not just emotionally, but financially. She had been bankrolling not a president, but a pretender to the throne. She knew, I'm pretty sure she knew his plans. Her enormous financial contributions were a gamble on a future empire, not just a republic. She had invested everything in him. And yes, ensuring his success was paramount to her own financial and social security. Does that part come off as cynical to you? Well, perhaps it was. But here's a twist. Genuine affection did exist between them. It must have been love. She was fiercely loyal to him no matter what. It is highly likely that Harriet, given her acumen, understood the obstacles to her ever becoming empress herself. The expectations for a monarch's consort were well known. While she might have hoped for, or even insisted on, marriage at times, she would have been aware that her background presented an unsurmountable barrier. In other words, she would have forgiven him if she thought there was something to forgive. Nonetheless, there are political ambitions, there's convention, tradition, constraints. But there's also, well, physiological needs. And let's not forget the simple fact that the two were in love. It's true. I think it's pretty obvious. And guess what? Eugénie interfered, of course. The idea of physical intimacy may have been repugnant to her, but the idea of jealousy evidently was not. She gave him help. She demanded that the visits to the Beauregard Palace cease at once, or else. Napoleon III complied. He wanted an heir. Harriet withdrew into the shadows, silent and loyal. And lo and behold, Eugénie got pregnant. And yes, she gave birth to a healthy boy, following which, according to historians, she never experienced physical intimacy again. And this was by choice. Never with her husband, nor did it ever occur to her to take a lover. You'd be right to wonder what was wrong with the woman. Some kind of childhood trauma? We don't know. Be that as it may, Napoleon and Harriet's affair never resumed. He had mistresses on the side. Harriet, after waiting for a couple of years, married a horse breeder. What's this obsession with people who work with horses? I don't know. Whereupon Napoleon's two illegitimate sons were taken from the Beauregard Palace and transferred to their biological mother's house in the very laundress they were taken from in their infancy. Ever scrupulous when it came to financial fairness, Napoleon III arranged for a sizable pension to make sure his sons got a good education and could, upon reaching adulthood, enter polite society. He sent his childhood friend, a member of the Bonaparte household, the son of a servant or a maid. He sent him to look after the laundress and the two sons. His name was Pierre Burr. He was utterly loyal to the emperor. 2 years later, he married the laundress, by then a widow, and adopted her two sons, thus legitimatizing them. They did okay by the era's standards. One of them eventually married into Hungarian nobility, but hey, that's a story for another day. After 2 years of marriage, Harriet divorced the horse breeder. She must have gotten on her nerves or something. Her own son, Martin, humiliated her publicly during his 21st birthday celebrations. He asked her, historians tell us, he made sure that everyone heard this. Mother, now that I'm a grown-up, perhaps you'd do well to tell me who my father is. From which we could surmise, however cautiously, that he hated the horse breeder, disdained Pierre Burr, and loathed his stepbrothers. Imagine what Harriet must have felt at that moment. She died young. She was only 42. Her fortune went to her son, who never lacked anything in his life. The emperor arranged for him to get a position.
Some sort of sinecure, I'll wager.
Whatever else he may have been, Napoleon III was never openly ungrateful. He was, at that time, at the peak of his power and popularity. Paris was undergoing the famous Reconstruction. The economy was relatively stable. Society sparkled and glittered, both high society and the demi-monde. Art, literature, architecture, music, developments and breakthroughs everywhere. At the opera, one masterpiece after another received their premiere. Rigoletto and Traviata by Verdi, Lohengrin by Wagner, at the Opera Comique, La Belle Hélène by Jacques Offenbach, the author of the famous Can-Can. The newly built boulevards were majestic, The Impressionists had their first official exhibition. In the end, the reconstruction of Paris did bankrupt the treasury. On top of that, Napoleon III got himself into trouble by declaring war on Prussia. He got his ass kicked at Sedan and never returned to Paris. Taking along Eugénie and his son, he crossed the Channel and settled in England, where he died 3 years later. And that is the story of two unusual, complex, unique, highly ambitious individuals who were in love with each other, Harriet and Louis. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please visit my site. This channel and my site depend, both of them, in great measure on your support. I am Ricky Vernio, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, and I'll see you soon.